Mi nombre, sorry, speaking in Spanish, thinking in Spanish again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph Citro, and welcome to this Variance Review Board hearing today, March 12th, 2019. The meeting of City of Tampa Variance Review Board, and I already told you my name. I am the chair during these proceedings. The members of the board that are present, starting on my left, are
Michael Villa,
Dustin Pastor,
Brett Feldman,
Gary Brown,
Susan Long.
and joining us tonight is Kristen Mora, Assistant City Attorney, along with Eileen Rosario and Miss Twanda Anthony and Mr. Knox from City Land Development and from City Services. I will take a few minutes to review tonight's procedures in the case being called in order that they appear on the agenda. When your case is called, the petitioner and or the what am I trying to say? Thank you. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will approach the podium. Ms. Anthony will then review the variance request with the board. After she is finished, the applicant or the agent will have 10 minutes to present their case. When that is finished, anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this variance request will have 3 minutes each to do so. When that is finished, the board will then ask the applicant and or the agent questions. After that is finished, the applicant and or the agent will then have 5 minutes for rebuttal if necessary. Any information such as pictures, plans that have not been previously submitted as part of your petition and you intend to present this in the hearing, you can present them for consideration in support of your petition. They must be individually presented and accepted by the board. After the acceptance by the board, you must submit them to staff to be entered and made part of the permanent record as evidence. The board bases its decision on competent and substantial evidence, which is presented and which meets the criteria for city codes of ordinances. The variance granted by the board will only be for what is shown on the site plan and will be in compliance with any terms and conditions stated in the approval by the board. You must have 4 affirmative votes for your variance to be approved. If approved, your variance will expire within 2 years of today's date. All other city codes will need to be met. If any cases are continued in tonight's hearing, they will be continued to May 14th or June 11th. If you wish to appeal the Variance Review Board's decision to City Council, you must file a petition for review of the board's decision within 10 business days of the decision. If your variance is granted, you will not be able to pull any permits until after a 10-day appeal period has passed. Before we begin, is there any business regarding the agenda that staff would like to address?
Twanda Anthony, Land Development Board. We do have 4 cases that need to be continued. The applicants have all requested continuances. 4 cases. There are 4 cases that need to be continued tonight.
Okay. Our next available date for all 4 would be May 14th?
Yes, May 14th.
Okay. Can you give us the case numbers, please?
Okay, VRB 1917. VRB 1917. VRB 1918. VRB 1922. And VRB 1934.
Council, can we lump all of these into one to be continued until May 14th?
Yes, in one motion.
Would someone like to make that motion?
Can you tell us how many are already there on the 14th? How many do we have on the 14th?
We currently have 10 cases
That makes 14.
for May 14th, and the deadline for submittal is March 18th, so there could be some additional cases.
Then do we want to move them to June 11th? Now, are the petitioners here? Do you know?
There is one petitioner here, VRB 1922. Alan Dobbs.
Is that petitioner here, please? Would you please come to the podium?
Oh, yes.
Please state your name for the record and your address.
My name is Alan Dobbs, 5502 North Cherokee Avenue.
Then, Mr. Dobbs, if we move you to the 14th, we can then, Ms. Anthony, move the rest to May 11th?
Yes.
I mean, June 11th. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Does he want to be on May 14th, or would he prefer?
That was a question. Would you prefer to be on May 14th or June 11th?
May 14th.
Okay, okay. Since you are here, and which case is yours, I'm sorry?
22.
Is there anybody in the audience that was going to speak or would like to speak about the continuance on VRB 1922? Seeing none, if someone would like to make a motion for this case, and
I'll
then we'll
make
go
a
through.
motion.
Okay.
I move that VRB 1922 be continued to May 14th.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Long, seconded by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay.
See you on the 14th. Now, if someone would like to make a motion for the rest to be moved until June 11th.
I'll do that. Doesn't matter. I move that VRB 1917, VRB 1918, and VRB 1934 all be continued to June 11th, 2019.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Long, seconded by Mr. Brown to continue these cases until June 11th. Any discussion? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the request for continuance on these cases? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ms. Anthony, they're all granted till June 11th. Anything else that staff has about the agenda?
That's all.
Okay. If I hear no other business that needs to be done by staff, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I be heard on the minutes before you entertain a motion?
Surely. Go right ahead.
Okay. My name is John Grandoff. My address is Suite 3700, Bank of America Plaza. And there's an error in the minutes from last month's meeting on item VRB 1926. And you let me explain for a moment. The vote that evening was to deny the application. There were 5 members seated. The vote was 3-2. Those voting yes to deny the motion were Mr. Pastor, Mr. DePapa, and Mr. Villa. Those who voted not to deny were Mr. Feldman and Chairman Brown at the time. The minutes recite that the motion failed on a 3-2 vote with Brett Feldman and Gary Brown voting nay. That is incorrect because under Chapter 27 and the procedural rules of the VRB, that motion passed. And if I may read to you what the rule says, and I'll put it in front of you. A quorum of the VRB necessary to conduct any business of the board shall consist of 4 members. You had 5 members that evening, so we met that requirement. A concurring vote of 4 members shall be necessary to approve an application for variance. However, a simple majority of those present, 3 out of 5, and empowered to vote shall be necessary to conduct routine business and deny an application for a variance. Now, Chapter 27 was adopted by the City Council to govern your hearings in the VRB. Later, the VRB adopted its own rules of procedure, and those rules of procedure are as follows. Votes required as to certain measures. A simple majority of those board members present shall be sufficient to conduct routine business, to deny any application, and to decide an administrative official determination on appeal. So 3 out of 5 denied the application. However, the vote of at least 4 members of the board shall be required to approve an application. Now, what's very instructive is the code, your rules also say insufficient or tie vote. When a matter is considered by the board and an insufficient or tie vote is obtained, the board's action becomes a nullity and the matter shall be automatically carried over for consideration at the board's next meeting as unfinished business. You did not meet that standard in 542 because you did not have an insufficient vote. You had a sufficient vote. Your business is over. The matter has been denied. There's nothing further to do by this board. I respectfully request that the minutes reflect that the motion passed and that the matter is concluded.
Ms. Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am aware of this, and it is accurate that there was a misunderstanding at our previous meeting. It had been a long night with a very short number of members, and there was a misunderstanding on the part of the Variance Review Board. I also missed it, and there was a misunderstanding on the part of the applicant, as well as everyone else that was in the audience, that a simple majority vote would not be sufficient to deny the item. In light of that, I believe, number one, that the minutes accurately reflect the understanding of all parties that were there and present at the VRB, and for that reason, I believe that your minutes are accurate and are fine for you to approve. And I also believe that it would be a concern for the city attorney's office for this matter to be considered a denial in light of the fact that the applicant did not understand that a simple majority would be able to deny his application. I believe it would be a due process concern.
Okay, so you are suggesting that we go ahead and accept the minutes as written
Correct, sir.
and then let legal, of course, take its own action.
Correct, sir. And I will address this matter further when we go on to the application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Mr. Randolph?
Mr. Speaker, may I be heard? This is what the rules say. The rules do not say that after you vote, you can say you misunderstood something and we'll do it next month. The vote is cast. You don't later say I was misunderstanding. I would like the opportunity to poll those of you who were present, and if you would answer to me as to whether you misunderstood anything about that hearing and that vote. May I inquire of the board?
Mr. Randolph, I think we should go ahead and proceed, and if you would like to bring up something with the city council or with legal staff, you have the right to do that.
Well, I'd like to poll the board, see if what the misunderstanding was.
Mr. Randolph, I'd rather not do that at this time. Okay. I hope you understand.
So you're going to continue the matter this evening?
We will discuss it this evening.
Okay. All right. I'd like the record to reflect that I believe the board is acting in violation of Section 27-78 and also Rule 5.1 and 5.2.
Mr. Randolph, duly noted.
Thank you.
Sir, do you want to say something to this?
Yes, just very briefly.
Briefly,
on behalf
please.
of the applicant, 1926. And just to be clear, at the beginning of the last variance review board, it was said that they would need 4 votes, one way or the other, and if you weren't satisfied because there weren't enough board members here, you could continue it to the next one. Based on that, we stayed with it, and we had it, and then it was 3-2. So, and I agree with Ms. Mora that we would be unduly prejudiced if we weren't allowed to proceed with this, and I just wanted to put that on the record because that was our understanding going into the last review board. If that was not the case and represented differently to myself, we would have continued it and been here tonight in front of the 6 of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Mora, you're up again. Would you like to speak to the board about ex parte communications?
I would, thank you. At this time, I would ask the members of the board if you've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items coming before you this evening. If you've had any verbal communications, please disclose the sum and substance of that communication, with whom it occurred and where it occurred, and as well as when it occurred. And if you've received any written communications, please disclose the nature of it and file it in the record.
Ms. Moore, I'm going to clarify because 1934 has been continued. And as I mentioned, I was made aware that my firm is involved in that. So I don't have any written communications. I don't have anything other than what I just said. But as it's being continued, I just wanted to clarify that's not an issue for this evening.
That is not an issue for this evening.
Thank you.
And now I digress back to the conversation before about making a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of the minutes as written from our last meeting.
Excuse me, I'd like to, not vote because I wasn't here, and I only watched one little item on there.
I did review the tape, so I feel confident that I can vote on what was presented, and I did see the minutes. So, anybody like to second?
Second.
We have a motion made by Mr. Brown to accept the minutes, seconded by Mr. Pastore. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. At this time, any person in the audience who is going to give any type of testimony today or speak about something, please stand to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may have a seat.
Thank you. First case we will be hearing this evening is VRB 18-110.
No, 1926.
Okay, my bad. I'm looking at one,
Jump to the
looking
new
at another.
cases.
I'm sorry. It's VRB 1926.
Wanda Anthony Land Development, this is case VRB 1926. The property address is 177 Cypress Avenue. Per section 27290.5, the applicant is seeking to reduce the rear yard setback from 5 feet to 1 foot to allow this pool enclosure. The case was continued at the February 12th hearing due to a 3-2 vote to deny. At the meeting, the applicant did agree to amend the request for the rear yard from 5 feet to 1 foot to 5 feet 3.4 feet, and they to allow the rear yard for the maximum height to remain at 15 feet. So he did agree to that condition. The property is zoned RS75 and was purchased in 2017. The single-family residence, including the pool, was built in 2018. This is a continuance, so I'll briefly go through the photos. This is an aerial of the site. Here's the corner lot. Here's a picture or view from the front. Here's a view from the corner. And here's the site plan. And this is the 3.4 that the applicant has agreed to amend the application request to for the rear yard setback.
Any questions for staff? Please proceed.
Anthony Severino. My address is 100 North Tampa Street, Suite 1900. I just want to reiterate and confirm the variance that is being requested. There were some questions last time that I'd like to address. As you can see, we're requesting to go from the 5 feet to 4 feet right here, and then along this part of the fence, we'd like to go from 5 feet to 3.4 feet, and have also, as Ms. Anthony mentioned, agreed to keep the height at 15 feet, the highest point. There were some discussions last time about what this pool screen was going to actually look like, and this is the original site plan, which should be in the record. So we have a revised site plan to better show where the various heights are and the half gable and the full gable. And if you see right here, there's going to be a half gable. The walls of the entire enclosure are 12 feet. The half gable, the height 15 feet, it will go directly into the side of the home. And then as we move to this side here, we'll have a full gable, the gable hip ends where, again, the height's 15 feet, and it'll go to this overhang, which is at 13.6 feet. And then down here at the bottom is actually the view of what it would look like from the rear of the property, which is the rear neighbor, who I believe is here tonight. And so this is exactly what it's going to look like, and what was added to the site plan were these dotted lines here to show the gable, this view here, and then these right here. And I've also got some just exemplar photos to kind of put a picture to it. so we can see what it's actually going to look like. This would be the half gable. This is just an exemplar. In the current case, it would actually go into the side of the house, not this overhang right here, but this is essentially what it would look like on this end right here. And then as we move down to the overhang right here behind the lanai, it will look like this. That's the proposed screen enclosure. And there will be, the only gutters will be these 7-inch super gutters, which are right here over the overhang where the full gable is. And as I addressed at the last variance review board hearing, the intent with this was never to put a pool cage here. It was intended to be an open air pool. There's other neighbors who have open air pools. But unfortunately, as time went on, the trees that are on the rear neighbor's property began to really basically put debris daily into the pool in question here, as well as leaves that continually clog up the filter. And I just want to show you, here was the site map that Ms. Anthony put up earlier, and here's the subject property. And you can see that the neighbor directly to the east, it's a very similar size house, similar size pool, no screen. That's what the applicant intended to do here, but as you can tell, they didn't have a tree problem, whereas here you can barely see the rear neighbor's house, which are covered by these grand oaks. And those trees are not on the applicant's property. We actually had a separate survey done to show where those trees are located. And the 3 main trees in question are here, here, and here. And this one is shared between the applicant and the rear neighbor. I believe they've agreed it's approximately 75% on the applicant's side and 25% on the rear neighbor. So these are the trees in question. The pool screen clearly can't go anywhere else. The request is a foot right here, 1.6 feet here, and then along here, which is not shown, are trees that are about 3 feet higher than the 6-foot fence that separates the 2 properties. As I mentioned, the reason and the request for the variance all relates to the debris and leaves that are accumulating on a daily basis from the adjacent trees. And I had put these pictures in the record at the last hearing, but I'd like to just put them back in again. This is literally overnight. This is what happens overnight again. This is a daily occurrence. This is the actual filter here. And so after the last hearing, which was on February 12th, the applicant took pictures almost on a daily basis from now until, I believe, yesterday. And this is what happens. And the applicant has a pool company that comes once a week on Friday. The applicant skims the pool himself pretty much daily, and this is still the result. This is day after day. And I'm just going to buzz through these just so that they're in the record. And this is consistent for the last 30 days. And as you can see, the leaf accumulation is quite significant. I'll just put a couple more of these in so we don't.
Sir, just so you know, you can also hand those in, and we'll make them available to the BRB members and they'll become a part of the record.
That was the last one. I have copies to hand in. Now, understanding the standard that the Variance Review Board has to abide by and whether or not to grant a variance, I'd like to run through those factors real quick. And I think the first thing I'd like to address is this is a non-use variance. We're not attempting to change the use of anything. It's simply to put a pool screen in, which wasn't contemplated at the time the home was built, and they tried to enjoy the pool for a period of time without the pool screen, and then it just became a necessity. There's no other way to keep these leaves out and this debris out. They've inquired about getting a creepy crawler, but that just gets clogged up and burns out the motor. I know at the last hearing, Mr. Pastor had suggested maybe there are other ways to mitigate this. I've done my own independent research. I haven't found anything. I found articles, in fact, to the contrary, that in Florida, pool screens are the norm. That's the way to keep out the leaves, the debris, the mosquitoes, sunlight as well. There are covers that can go over pools, but those are mainly used up north to winterize the pools. So the applicant is kind of left with this last resort to keep the leaves out. And the board recognized previously there really is no guidance as to what constitutes a practical difficulty or a necessary hardship in these cases. And I would suggest here the practical difficulty is pretty obvious from those pictures, which is the leaves, the debris, the daily cleaning of the pool, which is really affecting the use and enjoyment of that pool. And the same goes for the unnecessary hardship. These aren't the applicant's trees. He didn't purchase the house with these trees on the property. These were the neighbor's trees, which he has no control over. He attempted to not have a pool screen. It didn't work. And now he's requesting a slight variance to put that pool screen in to use and enjoy the pool. I'd like to...
You've got about a minute left.
I'll be really quick. I went through the last 14 years of the VRBO meeting minutes and agenda to see the outcome of various pool screen applicants similar to this. I believe I found 39. There were 3 that were denied, and I can address those later on rebuttal if necessary, but I would like to address 2 out of the 36 that were granted, which I think are relevant here. The first one was VRB 11-06, location 16005 Burnham Way. The request was to reduce the rear and side yard setbacks from 5 feet to 1 foot to construct a pool enclosure. The applicant addressed the board and showed 4 trees on site. Trees were small, but as time went by, the leaves became a problem. After board discussion, moved to approve and was seconded. The motion passed 7-0 unanimously. And 2 more real quick. The next one is VRB 11-23, 3909 South Kenwood Avenue. Reduce the side and rear yard setbacks from 5 feet to 2 feet to construct a screen enclosure. The applicant addressed the board, went over the particulars. He showed pictures of oak trees that are on adjacent properties which drop leaves into the pool. He showed pictures of the pool in the rear yard. Mr. Barron said there's no other place for the pool cage and made a motion to approve. The motion was voted unanimously to approve. And lastly, VRB 16-32, 73 Martinique Avenue on Davis Island, where this property is. Requests to reduce side yard from 5 to 3 feet and the rear yard from 5 to 4, similar to this case, for a pool enclosure. After board discussion, motion to approve, and the motion was approved unanimously. Very similar property on Davis Island. And real quick, I would say...
Thank you, Mr. Severino.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this case, VRB 1926? Mr. Grandolph.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Variance Review Board. My name is John Grandolph. My address is Suite 3700 Bank of America Plaza. I have the pleasure of representing Mr. Joe Reineman. Joe is here with his daughter, Debbie King, and they're the neighbors to the rear. First of all, the other cases have absolutely no precedental value. It's established law that what you do on a variance on another property has 0 import this evening, so please disregard those. When you buy a home, you go in the backyard and you look and you go, I'm going to build a pool, and you ask your architect, what are the rules about pools? And the architect says 5 feet from the rear, no higher than 15 feet. If you go over 1 foot, you have to start stepping back. So you walk back and you look and you see that you have a large oak tree in the corner of your property. The petitioner owns this oak tree because here's the survey stake on the corner. And you notice that your neighbor, Mr. Reineman, has 2 trees in his rear yard. And you immediately go, I'm going to have to put up a screen. So you build the screen 5 feet off the yard. You don't need a variance. You build your pool. These folks built the pool and then said, we need a screen. That is a classic self-created hardship that you're not here to remedy for them on the rights of Mr. Reineman. The statement of hardship written by Mr. Caldarelli says, the practical difficulties from the neighbor's tree that impacts the use, enjoyment, and operation of the residential pool located at 177 Cypress. There's approximately 8 feet of overhang of the tree canopy to the rear of the property. This hardship does not result from the actions of the applicant. Well, I took these photographs yesterday, and you'll see that they've done an admirable job of trimming those trees. So you have to trim trees from time to time if you have a pool. Now, the gentleman representing the petitioner says there's no other way other than the way they do up north. You put on a vinyl cover and you roll it back, and then you roll it over the pool. You vacuum the leaves off. That's how you take care of it up north. I think we can do that down south in Tampa. You have the technology to do that. That's their remedy without impacting the rights of Mr. Reineman. They bought the home in 2017. They bought the property in 2017, built a magnificent home in 2018. Their intent was not to put a pool cage. Only afterwards did they discover that the trees were a problem. That is a classic self-created hardship. Has nothing to do with the shape of the parcel, the layout of the property. You can't point to your neighbor and say, you're creating a hardship for me, so I need to put up a pool screen. That is not what the law says. The law says it has to be unique and singular. It cannot be a practical difficulty. You cannot substantially interfere with your neighbor. It has to be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the chapter, which is 5 feet setback, 15 feet of height. And the substantial justice being done has to be weighed against the practical difficulties. He has no practical difficulty in simply getting a bid to put a vinyl liner across the pool with a machine roller, and he rolls it up when he wants to swim, and he rolls it back out when he doesn't want to swim. It catches the leaves in the fall, no problem at all. Doesn't affect Mr. Reineman. The leaves are not an extraordinary hardship. These are oak trees, and as I said at the beginning of my discussion with you, they were on notice at the time they bought the property to walk back there and see what the situation would be with the pool. There were 3 trees that were an issue. They could have accounted for that and built the screen as of right 5 feet away. You don't come to the Variance Review Board to fix your mistake. You do it ahead of time and ask permission. You don't come afterwards to ask for a variance that is nothing but self-created. I respectfully request that you deny the variance this evening. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Randolph? Anybody else? Sorry.
Mr. Randolph, could you put that last exhibit up?
The code?
Yeah, where you had the underlined, the underlined
Oh,
portions
the statement of hardship.
Of the hardships.
Right,
yeah.
this is the statement of hardship.
Yeah.
That's my underlining.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I think you made some great points, but my question is about number 3.
Yes.
Will not substantially interfere with the neighbor. Could you give us a little more on how that interference, or what the interference actually is?
Setbacks are created for aesthetic purposes to allow light and air to pass between properties, and also for emergency personnel to get between properties, so the fireman can run between the property. The substantial interference is you're affecting his property right to have adequate space between the property, plus the aesthetic interference of the screen vertical being that much closer to the home. The rule was created to be 5 feet, so that would allow for air and space and to not create a visual blight upon my client. 5 feet is the rule, and that was passed to do that. And that is the substantial interference that he will bear.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Grando. Mr. Severino. Questions for Mr. Severino? Please.
Mr. Severino, I assume you're going to address the self-created hardship issue, because I'd like to hear an answer to that. I really have 2 questions. That's one of them. The other is to ask you to explain, I know you talked about it a little bit last time, but I'd like to hear it again. Explain why you cannot operate within the 5-foot setback, why you need this additional foot.
To answer your second question first, we're requesting basically the bare minimum that we can to put the pool wall where it is. If we go to the 5 feet, it's going to be right at the edge of the pool, and there's no ability, there's no space to maneuver anywhere in there. It creates a safety hazard. They have children being able to get out of the pool if necessary. That additional foot that is put here allows for that safety, and it also, again, we're going 1 foot, and I'll address it on rebuttal, but you know, this isn't a huge variance that I've seen granted in the past. It's 1 foot. We're doing all that is necessary. We're not asking to go from 5 feet to 1 foot and take additional space. We're putting the pool screen the only place it can go on that side of the pool, and so that's why we need the 1 foot there, and then a little additional more space down here because of the way that the property line is. Your first question about the unique hardship here is, and I know this was raised last time by some of the board members, that there's trees everywhere, right? So you build a house, you buy a house, there's going to be trees. These trees do not affect everyone the same. If you look at the actual aerial photo, you can see that different neighbors have different levels of tree cover, and this unique hardship, they're not his trees. They're not the homeowner's trees. I completely understand, Mr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Severino. Maybe I wasn't, we may have misheard each other. I was just simply asking if you would address the self-created hardship issue, not the unique hardship of the trees.
Right.
Can you address the self-created hardship?
Yeah, and I think they're kind of complementary in the sense that it was self-created. He argues it's self-created because we built a house there and there were trees on the neighbor's property. Because we built a house, we self-created it. Well, they're not our trees. We didn't put the trees there. I would understand his argument, and it may lend some credence if we built the house and the trees were on our property. And we said, okay, we're building our house. This is where we're putting our pool. These trees are here. And then I came to you and asked for a variance. But they've done what they could to not need a pool screen, which is trim the trees. They have a pool company come once a week. And it's just not working. And so it's not self-created in the sense that the trees were on our property, we knew it, and if you look at the actual survey here, there were no other variances requested. It's not as if these go to property line, so that was never the intent to build this huge monstrosity and need these variances, and the pool itself is actually a lap pool. It's not your normal swimming pool because of the size of the lot and the shape. So they've done everything they can to have the pool and to enjoy it without a screen, but it's simply the neighbor's trees which are causing the difficulty with keeping it clean on a daily basis.
So to confirm what you were saying, you can put the pool screen within the 5 feet. Physically can.
I would say physically you can, but from a safety perspective, I don't think it's safe to do that. I would not.
But you think a 1 foot strip of pavers is safe to navigate?
I think it provides more safety, and we're trying to do as little as possible to not request more of a setback, and we think that creates enough safety for the kids to get out of the pool if they need to right there.
Okay.
Brown.
My question is along the same line as Mr. Pastor. You had lots of photographs you were showing us of the leaf problem. I think there was one I'd like to see, but I can't, without looking at all of them very quickly, tell you which one. But it was one that showed this decking between the pool and the, yeah, okay, that's fine. That'll work. But you had, I think you had another one where you were on the other side of the pool looking straight down. That's probably a better picture for us. Okay, that's fine. How wide is that deck?
That deck is about 18 inches.
Okay, so if you met the 5-foot criteria, you'd have about 6 inches inside the cage.
No, my understanding, I'm sorry, ask that again?
If it's 18 inches, I'm assuming, and you can clarify because I don't want to assume
Yeah,
anything.
let me-
On your site plan, there's an edge of the pool deck drawn,
Correct.
okay? So you're proposing to put it on the very edge of that deck, which would leave you the 3.4 feet and the 4 feet.
Correct.
Okay, so the question is, if you had to meet the 5-foot criteria, you'd be moving in a foot plus a little bit on that 18 inches.
Yeah, if, in a few
So
minutes,
that would leave you, math tells me that would leave you 6 inches plus.
6 inches, so I'm gonna
Right.
look through my notes and confirm whether or not this is 18 inches or a foot, that deck.
Okay,
So, if I
well,
look at this-
okay. I mean, to me, it looks even larger than 18 inches, but I can't testify to that, only you can.
right.
So, that's my question. Thanks.
Any other questions? Now's your time for rebuttal, if you care.
Yes, real briefly. First, I'd like to address Mr. Grandolph's kind of opening remarks about how my client went and talked to the architect and what they talked about and what the architect said, or his idea of how this would have gone down. My client did not intend to put a pool screen up. I've made that clear. That was not his intent. They put the pool in. He said he wanted a pool. They put it within the variance, and then it became a problem. The trees, about them being cut, Mr. Grandolph said, you know what, trees have to be cut sometimes. He's right, but Mr. Knox has advised me and the applicant that those trees cannot be trimmed any further. So there's nothing else we can do with those trees. Those trees are going to stay where they are. Addressing the pool cover that Mr. Grandolph said we could get a bid for and put on. I have never seen one in Florida. I'm not aware of them in Florida. They're intended for winterizing the pool, not to keep debris out, to have to take it on and off every day. I spoke to the pool screen company. The woman that runs the pool screen company told me that she had never heard of anyone in 15 years doing that or requesting a quote for that. And I do want to address the previous VRBO decisions that I highlighted. Although each case is unique, I believe those do provide a good backdrop of the hardship criteria. I evidenced 2 of those that had to do with leaves specifically. Another one on Davis Island that was almost the identical setback for a pool screen. Although there was no evidence of what the hardship was, the board still granted it, and I think the overwhelming majority of these, I think I said 36 out of 39 were granted, goes to what the intent of the variance is for, which is, I understand the rule's 5 feet, but sometimes things come up and you need a variance to do what you need to do, in this case the pool screen. And again, I believe the applicant is being extremely reasonable with the 1 foot and I believe 1.6 feet. We've done what we believe everything we can to minimize the impact on the neighbor. And the moving it to the 5 feet to the edge of the pool, we believe creates a safety issue, especially for they have 2 young children, and that would be the primary reason for that foot. It gives them a little bit of buffer if needed. So that's all. We respectfully request that you grant the variance. Thank you.
Without objection, I will close the public hearing and open up for board discussion and/or meeting, and/or a motion.
If I may be heard briefly, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you, Variance Review Board members, for allowing the applicant to speak and hearing this case in order to guarantee due process. I appreciate that. Procedurally, where we are at is we would need from the board, prior to any motions, a motion to reconsider the motion that was heard, or the motion from February, the February hearing. So procedurally, that is where we are at.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider, as we have 2 additional board members here, or maybe even more different people than that, I'm not sure, but at least 2 new people.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made by Mr. Pastor, seconded by Ms. Long to reconsider this case. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? It's unanimous. All right. Board discussion and or motion, please.
Yeah?
Please proceed.
All right, so I was on the fence last time, although I was persuaded by some discussion about, some of my discussion about the minimal impact, about what is permissive as of right, that essentially we're looking at a 1-foot change with a screen enclosure. But given the information that I heard tonight, and given the discussion, which was hearty as of last time about the self-created hardship, I'm again on the fence, although now I am leaning more in favor of denial. So I'm interested in hearing what others have to say. My opinion is obviously fluid, and I'm interested in hearing my colleagues' opinions.
My opinion remains the same. The issues that I mentioned last time were that, of course, it's self-created. They built the house just recently, and the people that built the house live in the house, and the trees were present. It doesn't matter if they own the trees or you don't own the trees, or they're on another property, your property, or if you're in the middle of the field and the tree's right next to your house, the tree is there, and it was there when it was built. So yes, it would have been nice if a builder or an architect would have pointed out the fact that you might want to consider a screen for the reason of the trees, and maybe that did or didn't happen and decisions were made. Irrelevant. Point is that the trees were there. I think the biggest issue for me is that the most immediate neighbor that's being affected by this is opposing it. And it's a rear yard issue. It only really affects the one neighbor, and they are adamantly opposed to it. And it's for the reasons that Mr. Grandoff stated, that it's the space that's guaranteed them by the code, or not guaranteed, but it's a right afforded them by the code, unless we overrule that they have a little bit of distance between their neighbors. And I know last time we talked about what is 18 inches, and 18 inches with a 15-foot wall can be quite substantial in the backyard. But the bigger issue, and I don't remember if we clarified this or not last time, but we clarified it tonight, is that it can be built at 5 feet. And I'm not sure what a 1-foot perimeter gets you as far as safety. I'm not sure what the safety is. Is it so a parent can run around and grab a kid? Because a parent, a full-grown adult on 1 foot, is not going to do very well running. Or is it for a kid to sit on the edge? I don't know, but it doesn't seem like that 1-foot edge is getting me anything in regards to the safety. And so I think the fact that you can build this within code and then they can have the leaf issue resolved is their right, but to encroach upon the neighbor just doesn't seem reasonable. And I have seen the automated pool covers in Florida in my many decades of living here. They're not common. They do exist. And so, as Mr. Grandoff said, we do have the technology. It could be done. So I just don't support doing it when the neighbor is so opposed to it and they're the only person that's really affected by it, other than the person that created the hardship.
Ms. Long.
I keep looking at this, even if there were none of those rollout in Florida, they're available, and I don't think that's a valid argument. But I've never seen them in Florida. To me, that tells me nothing. I lived up north for many years, and most pools have them. Usually it's for winter, but they use them in the summer if they have a lot of trees. So they do serve that purpose, and that would not encroach on the neighbor's, you know, yard or trees or anything. I understand the self-created hardship or difficulty, and I'm torn. I don't understand why I had a pool when I moved to Florida, and I built it, and, you know, made sure there weren't any trees over it, because I know that trees drop leaves all the time. And I can't imagine building a pool uncovered under a bunch of big old oak trees, which mine are still dropping leaves, and not expecting leaves to be in your pool. It just, to me, is incomprehensible. And my initial reaction when I read this is you built the house and the pool in 2018. It's 2019, so a year later, and now you want to put in a thing. Just seems like they're just too close together to be whatever. So I'm kind of inclined to deny, but I'm not totally convinced.
Well, I kind of keyed on the fact that we heard tonight, which we didn't hear last month, I don't believe, that yes, we can build all the way up to the edge of the pool. So, you know, hearing that point, you know, looking at it the other way, you could kind of look at this as, well, you know, not having the cage is a denial of reasonable use of the pool because of the neighbor's trees. But on the other hand, if you look at putting this thing to the edge, you know, the reasonable use of the pool is ensured. Now, perhaps the applicant may have an issue with the safety with that, but, you know, at some point the applicant has to bear some responsibility on absorbing some of this. And I think that a compromise here would be that they just do the pool at the line, or the cage at the line at the edge. And so in that case, I would be more inclined now to deny.
Mr.
Mr. Randolph has changed my opinion. And although I still believe that even though, you know, you have to draw the line somewhere, and 5 feet is the line that people way smarter than us drew a long time ago. But I mean, I could certainly live with that screen enclosure being at 4 feet. I really am, and this is based on the testimony we heard in the last time, which wasn't presented tonight. You know, the actual photographs and views from the backyard's neighbors, and how the applicant has planted tall vegetation to minimize or mitigate the appearance of the screen enclosure. But, you know, Mr. Randolph still raises valid concerns, and which is why the setbacks are there. Yeah, the real shame in all of this is that well, I shouldn't say shame. The applicant made decisions, design decisions to build what they built with the understanding that they weren't going to screen it. If they had thought differently when they built it, I'm sure the design would have been shifted. There was plenty of room to shift it to allow for the 5-foot screen enclosure, so that speaks to the self-created hardship. But I can certainly understand that, and I don't know that we actually heard testimony that the applicants moved here from out of state. I don't know that we ever heard that. We didn't hear that they were longtime Floridians and that they had experiences with the oak pollen leaf season that we experience here. If they truly understood how bad it would be, regardless of where the trees were located in terms of proximity to their rear yard, they almost would have a problem, in my opinion, that would warrant having the screen anyway. And in the design consideration of doing a pool without a screen, there were other options, not covers. You could have multiple skimmers. You could have had 4 skimmers in that pool, as small as it is, and it would have trapped the leaves without a whole lot of maintenance. The problem now is that gets really expensive to go back and retrofit a pool at this point. And they obviously know now the error of their decision of not having a screen enclosure in Tampa, Florida. So, but in addition to Mr. Grandoff's comments, I think I took another look at the existing deck behind the pool, and yes, I am convinced that there's room to keep the screen at 5 feet.
All right, board members, who is going to make a motion on this case?
I move that the variance request for case VRB 1926 for the property located at 177 Cypress Avenue for a reduction in the rear yard from 5 feet to 3 and whatever change we discussed feet with an encroachment of eaves and gutters be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet its burden of proof to provide competent substantial evidence in the record at this public hearing of a necessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in Section 2780 of the City Code, specifically that this is a self-imposed hardship due to the builders of the house owning the house and the trees already being present, and that we have adamant neighbor opposition, and we see that there appears to be room to place the screen within the required setback.
I'll second that motion.
Motion has been made by Mr. Pastor, seconded by Mr. Brown, to deny the variance request for VRB 1926. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'm sorry that your variance request has been denied. Our next case is VRB 1901.
Board, this is VRB 1901. The property address is 10406 North Lantana Avenue. Per section 27156 and 27290, the applicant is seeking to reduce the south side yard setback from 7 feet to 2.9 feet and the rear yard from 20 feet to 3 feet, as well as the building separation from 5 feet to 2 feet to construct a metal accessory structure and retain existing accessory structures. The property is zoned RS50, and the applicant purchased the property in 1993. The single-family dwelling was built in 1961. Applicant is in the process of filing a release of a portion of the easement to accommodate the shed. TICO has sent verification that they are willing to release the easement for the portion that's being requested tonight. Here's an aerial of the site. Here's the property. Here's a photo from the front. Here's also a view from the front, and this is the TICO easement area where they're requesting to put the shed. Here's the site plan. The area in red is
Could
the
you pull
TICO
that down a little
easement.
bit? There, that's good, thank you.
The portion in red is the TICO easement. The yellow is the area where they're requesting the metal shed, and you can see the portion that is encroaching into the easement. Are there any questions for staff?
Yes, Ms. Anthony, how many structures are on this property? Just the 2 so far, and the proposed metal shed is coming later, correct?
Correct. Well, there's the primary structure, there's a structure in the rear of the property, and then there is it appears that there's a small shed on the side.
And the 2 accessory structures, the 2 sheds, they are all within legal limits?
They are requesting primary structure setbacks for the proposed
For the
accessory
proposed one,
structure.
but the others 2 are fine, are within
Yes,
code?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Anthony? Petitioner.
I'm not sure how this works.
Please state your name for the record,
Okay.
your address, and whether you've been sworn in or not.
I was sworn in. My name's Charles Arnell, 10406 North Lantana Avenue.
Okay, you have 10 minutes to give us your reasoning why we should grant you a variance for your property.
Well, I had a makeshift building back there for years, and I drove up one day, looked like an eyesore to me. So I decided to purchase a metal carport. So I tore it down. I thought getting a permit was just walking in, paying some money, getting a piece of paper, and doing what you had to do. And then I found out that's not how it works. So I've been dealing with this for probably 8 months. And all I want to do is put up a carport. It's a large carport to put my toys in to get them out of the weather because it's beating them up bad. I put my truck up for sale, and then I took it down because I don't want to get rid of my truck. I like my truck. So I just need a place to put my toys out of the weather. They're getting ruined. And, you know, to tinker with them from time to time and not be outside.
Does that conclude your testimony?
Unless you tell me no.
Keep going then. You've got about another 6 more minutes.
I don't know if I can talk that long. It's just a matter of putting something up that looks good. You know, it's going to look better than what I had. You know, nobody ever said anything to me about what I had. But I pulled up and it looked bad, and that's when you got to do something about it. So I went out and I purchased the metal carport. I already have it. I thought I was going to put it up, but I was wrong. And when I went in there and I asked about it, they told, when I bought it, I said, do I need a permit for this? They told me yes. And that's how I ended up here. All I want is a carport.
Are you finished giving evidence now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience, excuse me, that would like to give testimony or speak about this variance request? Seeing none. Board members, do you have any questions for the petitioner?
I do, sir.
Please. Mr. Feldman.
Mr. Arnott, can you tell us a little bit about, you said you saw what was there, it was an eyesore, you took it down.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about what was there before you took it down, how long it was there, how long everything, I know that the original structure was built in like 1961.
I wasn't there then.
I understand that. But there were these other sheds on the property, all this stuff. Was it there when you bought it?
No, sir. That was put up 25 years ago.
Okay.
And the structure that I tore down basically had been there about the same amount of time. But it was really makeshift versus the other things. I didn't build those other things. Okay, so they were actually a lot nicer. What I built was basically a pipe frame with tin on it that had 2 sheds put together at the back, and that's how that got there. And it really was an eyesore.
And that was operated as your carport for a period of time?
It was where I kept my toys inside and I tinkered with them.
And you said that was put up about 25 years ago?
God, it had to have been 25 years ago.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's all I needed, thank you.
Ms. Long.
Now, the one that you took down, was it located the same place that you want to put this one?
Well, actually, it was shifted more to the north, but basically in the same general area.
Okay, but it was more to the rear of the property?
It was closer to the north property line.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at what's on here. Tell me about the covered concrete thing with the
All
wood
it
deck on
is
the
a metal
side?
roof back there. It's actually aluminum, and it's got a slab underneath it. And all it's used for is like barbecues, to get out of the weather, stay out of the sun. That's all it's for.
Okay. But the side facing the house is open?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering if you pulled this further up, closer to the house, closer to the front of the lot,
Could I
the metal
move it?
building. If
No.
that would obstruct your ability to utilize that covered concrete.
Yeah, it was, the slab was there. I just took
Put
advantage
something
of
on
it.
top of it?
Yeah, it was a little smaller, and what we did is when the building was built, they just poured around it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
I need help from staff. Could you put the site plan back up for me? Slide it down and then make it a little bit larger since I have a hard time seeing.
You and everybody else.
Make it as large as you can.
Big, 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 big.
That'll work. Whoa, whoa, go back there, right there, and then slide it down so we can all look at it. All right, help me understand the request. The side yard setback from 7 to 2.9 feet. Would you point to the 2.9 feet?
Okay, let's turn it this way.
Are you talking about the?
Well, no, I want staff to point to it.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Where's the
So this is the
2.9 feet?
2.9.
That's it.
So that's on another existing building,
Correct.
not, so it's not, and he's wanting to cause that to be in primary setback. And this goes back to because he's got so many
Side yard,
individual
yeah.
buildings, right?
Okay.
Yes,
Okay. And the 20-foot, and our agenda says 4 feet, but the application, I think, says 3 feet. Could you point to the 3 feet in the rear?
and this
So
is
that's on the other building
yes.
that's existing.
Oh, so we're just vesting these
Okay,
other buildings.
and then the last one is building separation from 5 to 2 feet. Is that, I think I know where it is now, is that the smaller, the first smaller building to the home, to the
Correct.
screen enclosure? Is that where that issue is?
Correct.
5 to 3 feet?
No, 5 to 2 feet.
Well, because on
So
here,
that's the, well, I'm looking at the minutes.
shows 3 feet.
Well,
I don't,
it
Whatever.
doesn't, it's not clear to me that it's even 2 feet, but it is between the small frame shed, yes, and the screen porch.
gotcha.
Okay, so the wanting to construct this new structure brought all this out, and now I understand. And he is meeting the primary setbacks on the new structure and the separation, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Staff?
I mean, for the petitioner.
Yeah, let me ask a quick one.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a letter from Tico, or you received a letter from Tico saying they'd be willing to give you that space back there?
Well, I'm
Release
not
that-
sure if I personally received it. It came through the city of Tampa. Barbara Lynch
Okay.
is the
so
one that
city
helped
has-
me get that.
City has that then?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Counsel, then all this is hinging on whether or not that easement is going to be granted to the petitioner. Because if it's not granted to the petitioner, then he can't build the structure.
There is no guarantee that that easement release will be granted. It is irrelevant for purposes of this, whether or not it will be granted, because it is a separate issue that he will need to address. Your question is whether or not the variance should be granted. He will have to work separately with city staff and Tampa Electric Company to try to have that released. And there's no guarantee, even if the variances are granted today, that that will be granted.
Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying that.
I'm not understanding that.
If Tico doesn't give it to him, the only thing he got approved is vesting those other places, right?
That's all we're doing. That's all we're doing.
My understanding is that the easement release is with respect to the new proposed structure. I believe that the variances actually relate to the existing structures that are not within the easement.
Okay, I agree. Thank you.
Ms. Pastor?
I'm still finding trouble to find anywhere that the new structure has anything to do with the variance. It doesn't, right? So we're not discussing it at all, so Tico doesn't matter, the new structure doesn't matter?
That's right. It's just existing.
Okay.
Okay.
For Tawanda Anthony Land Development, the reason that the new structure comes into play is because because of the size of the new structure, now the accessory structures have to meet primary structure setbacks.
So again, Ms. Anthony, then I go back to my original question. If this proposed building wasn't there, all the other structures would be legal at this point now.
They would have to meet accessory structure setbacks, not primary structure setbacks, correct?
There you go. I was trying to wrap my head around it, and I finally have.
because they're the 3 feet.
Do you have any closing remarks?
Well, the smaller building, about 100 square foot, that's 2 foot 9 inches off the side. I have a letter from my neighbor that approved it. And between the 2 foot they're talking about, okay, is the 2 points of the roofs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in between the buildings. I drive a 4-wheeler through there and never had a problem at all. And the one out back, I have railroad tracks behind me. They're never going to build anything. And as far as TICO goes, I thought I had the approval from them. I have nothing else to say. Oh, what is a carport?
That's what you're here for. Okay, without any objection, we'll close the public hearing and open up for board discussion and/or motion. Ms. Bester.
I did read the letter from the neighbor that says that they do not mind that building there, the little building there, immediately next door. I was not aware of the train tracks until right now, so that's good to know. So there is no rear neighbor concern. So I don't have any issues with this.
Anybody else? Then, Mr. Pastor, you've been doing such a great job making motions.
I did every one last month.
And that's why I'm calling on you again, because you do it so well.
I'm looking at the minutes for last month. I'm gonna go back and look.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
I'd like to make a motion to approve VRB 19-01 located at 10406 North Lantana Avenue. And correct me if I'm wrong, to reduce the rear yard setback from 7 feet to 2.9 feet, reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 2.9 feet, reduce the rear yard from 20 feet to 3 feet, and building separation between the very small accessory building and the screen porch from 5 feet to 2 feet, with allowed encroachments for eaves and gutters per section 27-156. In that the testimony tonight has shown that there really is no hardship being created to immediate neighbors, and that this is because he wants to build a really big carport.
I got big toys.
And that it's simply just vesting the existing structures. So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
There has been a motion made by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mrs. Long, to approve the variance request for VRB 1901. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations, your variance request has been approved unanimously.
That means I get my carport?
You got to go to TICO.
You got TICO.
You got to deal with TICO.
Okay, but I don't have to do this again. I just got to get TICO. I think I won. Is that it?
That's
I
it.
thank y'all.
Have a good night.
So what do I do? Just go ahead and leave? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our next case is VRB 18-110.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is application VRB 18-110. The property is located at 4427 West Fairview Heights. Per section 27-156, the applicant is seeking to reduce the rear yard from 20 feet to 13 feet to enclose an existing screen room. The applicant is currently in permitting for the construction of residential additions, including the aluminum screen room. The property is zoned RS60 and was purchased in 2017. The house was built in 1957. Here's an aerial showing the parcel. This is Fairview Heights. Here's a photo facing front of the property. And here's another photo facing west. And here's a photo facing east. Here's the site plan of the proposed addition. And you can see the encroachment in the rear yard.
Can you bring that down just a little bit for us? There you go, thank you.
And this is the encroachment into the rear yard. And the circle is just the scope of work. And here's an elevation, the rear elevation showing what they're proposing. Are there any questions for staff?
Thank you, Ms. Anthony. Petitioner?
Francisco Diaz, 519 East Stratford Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33603. I am the contractor. This is an elderly customer of mine that within the same existing footprint, this was a screen enclosure, and they just wanted to make it air conditioned so they could enjoy that back room there. And when we went to submit for permitting, come to find out, it was built not within the setbacks. So we're staying within the existing footprint. We're just replacing the wall to match the existing finishes, as you see in the drawings there, cut brick, paint, and that's it.
And could you please just go ahead and tell us about the hardships one more time, please?
Yeah, just an elderly couple that's looking to, use this outdoor space. It gets extremely hot back there, and it's where they sit to, do their therapy and work out and stuff like that, and they can't take the condition of the heat, so they just want to turn it from an outdoor area to a heated and cooled indoor area.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to VRB 18110? Seeing none, board members, do you have any questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Diaz, the screen enclosure that exists before you're going to take it out and enclose it, do you know when that was built?
I think it's original to the home. It's within the, I think it might have been a slab, and then it might have gotten screened in over the years, but my customer purchased the home as is.
When did they purchase it?
2017.
Okay. And you're not moving any closer, you're just closing up what is current screen?
Yeah, right on the same footprint. So just removing and putting right on the existing footprint.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Diaz, do you know if they had any conversations or discussions with immediate neighbors, side, rear?
They did, and I did as well, as I mailed out hundreds of letters. Many called, they said,
hundreds?
Yeah. That's what we had to do it 3 different times because the post office lost documents the first time, the building department missed a document the second time, so hundreds of letters, literally, on this case. But yeah, I spoke to several neighbors, so did the homeowner. They said, look, as long as it's not encroaching on my property, it's been there since we've ever lived here, it was there since they built the house pretty much. They said, yeah, it doesn't bother us at all. As long as it's not a foot on the fence like previous cases, the neighbors are perfectly fine with it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pastor.
Can you verify, based on what appears to be on the floor plan, that this new wall is going to be flush with the existing wall? There's a little bump out in the back here. It looks like the new wall lines up with that existing wall?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Would you like a little time for rebuttal? Anything you'd like to say to conclude?
No, sir.
Pardon me? Without any objection, I will close the public hearing and open up for board comments or motion.
This seems pretty cut and dry to me. It seems as if there's no objections, there's no issues, and they're pretty much staying within the footprint. So unless anyone else has any comments, I'll make a motion to save Mr. Pastor from having to do it. I move that variance request for case VRB 18-110 for property located at 4427 Fairview Heights be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing to reduce the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 13 feet with an encroachment for eaves and gutters based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code. Specifically, that the intent is to enclose an existing screen lanai, that it is maintaining the current footprint and has no impact upon neighbors.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Feldman, seconded by Mr. Villa, excuse me, to approve the petition for VRB 18-110. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Diaz, your petition has been granted unanimously.
Thank you, board. Have a good night.
Thank you. Our next case is VRB 1924.
Towanda Anthony Land Development, application number VRB 1924. The property is located at 701 Northwest Shore Boulevard. Per section 27283.7, the applicant is seeking to reduce the required parking spaces from 55 to 48 spaces to allow the existing building to change from professional office to medical office and research. The property is zoned CG and was purchased in 1984. According to Hillsborough County Property Appraiser's Office, the 8,140 square foot commercial building was built in 1964. Transportation Planning objects to the proposed parking reduction, but the VRB board may authorize the reduction if it meets the hardship criteria.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Good.
Was this project in front of us before?
Yes.
And then how long ago was that?
This was continued from December.
From when? I'm just mumbling.
Well,
You're just mumbling.
excuse me, it was from January.
Pardon?
It was continued from the January public hearing date.
It was continued? Because my recollection, there was a vote, but I could be wrong on that.
I thought so too. I was going to ask if it's been more than a year.
Well, the applicant has been. Okay. Yeah, the applicant is stating that it was in January of 2016, so it has been quite a while.
2016.
2016.
Oh, well, that's different.
Okay, but but was it voted on, or was it just tabled?
I think it was a couple years ago. In my recollection, it was denied. That's why I asked it to be longer than a year.
2016, 2017.
Yeah,
It would be longer than a year. Most people's years.
Okay.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Anthony. Petitioner?
So he has.
Okay.
Did that have to be, I'm sorry, legal, did that have to be submitted beforehand? Or can we ask somebody in the green room to help us with this?
Mr. Chair, my understanding is those must be submitted, I believe it's 3 days, it may be 2 days prior to the hearing.
To that point, I did ask Ms. Anthony if she needed my presentation ahead of time last week, and I just didn't receive a response, and that's why I brought it alongside today. I think we greatly aid
let's go ahead and proceed as is, okay? Go ahead.
Since I already set a precedent doing this, and this is a medical office, and I build such things in my own practice, I should probably recuse myself because I don't know what their business is and if it conflicts with my own. And rather than find out, I just go sit over there and wait for you guys to do this.
It's a spinal surgery.
Yeah, definitely. Then.
Then who's going to make the motion?
Sure.
I just wanted to point out for him, it's possible.
Anthony Matanti, 701 North West Shore Boulevard. Let's see. How do we raise this up? I'll just start. The history of the property actually dates to 1999 for the current structure. It was built, it was 16,000 square feet, built in 1999 and 2000 approved. But it was a general office. At the time, the code was exactly, the parking code remains the same from 20 years ago. When it was built, it was underparked. It received an administrative variance. To that effect, it would have required 53 spaces. There were only 48. I learned it was administrative variance granted at that point. And when the current owners bought this, they wanted a permanent solution, and their main goal was to build a spinal surgery center. And to that effect, the parking increases as we've seen. And but the way the site is currently constrained and makes it unique is, if you're looking immediately to the left of the photograph, that's I-275. There's nowhere to go. They've met every single setback requirement. They also have current landscaping and some massive oak trees on property. They maintain the ADA accessibility and also maintaining the safe routes for bicycle pedestrians and transit riders. There is a bus stop directly in front of the office. And because of the original administrative variance and extensive research we've done, we want to find a permanent solution for them. They did receive a parking lease with a neighboring property. Unfortunately, it's non-recordable. It's been in place for 2 years since, I believe, the previous meeting, but because it's unrecordable, the city's not recognizing it. So we started to go back to the drawing board to say, what can we do to make this work? We were able to get it down to 55 spaces, with roughly the entire first floor would be medical. A majority of the third floor would be medical, but we would replace the remaining square footage with research, with a research office. A portion of the third floor would be research, and the entire second floor would be dedicated to research. Now, the one business is a spinal surgery center, and part of that hardship is medical office is very, very broad. It's a wide net. This isn't a high-impact office. They see at maximum 12 patients a day, because this is very, strategic and inclusive surgery. It's not a walk-in clinic. And to be able to meet that parking requirement, we did find a research fellow. He's a former Navy SEAL who is in the process or has just acquired his geobiomedical doctorate, and he works closely with the veterans within the community and MacDill Air Force Base. He does hyperbaric research. So as a Navy SEAL, he was a diver. He learned about the benefits of hyperbaric chambers, how they work, how they aid the body. And that's the research fellow who's coming in. He's the only person right now. He anticipates probably hiring 2 to 3 more employees. That's why the number was reached to 55. And with all that being said, I just have to interject here too. Mobility is truly changing and evolving here in Tampa Bay. We hear it all day, all for transportation. You have, the Regional Transit Feasibility Study. You have Tampa Bay Next. And at another office that they operate out of, almost 25% of their their daily trips of patients are through their Uber corporate account. The doctor has an Uber corporate account where he actually brings patients into the office. That's part of his business. So they've reduced the amount of parking that they need at those other offices. And truly, you see it every day. You read about it in the news. You see it at all the council meetings and everything. Tampa Bay is evolving, and it's the way it moves around. And this doctor is at the forefront of that as well. To speak about the specific hardships in there, there's the unique site constraints. There's also, you could say he's changing the use to medical office, but my counter would be he's tried to work within the code as best as he can to bring in a research fellow, and the property has already had an administrative variance granted. He's asking for 2 additional spaces. To my knowledge, this in 20 years, I couldn't find any complaints about parking at this office. In closing with that, I just want to drive home that fact that he does use technology to his advantage to get patients to and from his office. And I can understand, say, hey, well, actually, he's a guy who just wants to get it zoned and sold. That's not the case. It would be an extensive build out to be a surgery center. And then who knows, he gets letters constantly from FDOT, and I think we know why. He's right up against it, right up against the massive interchange of State Road 60 and 275. So, you know, it could be 5 years, it could be 7 years, it could be 20, hopefully, you know, but we don't know. We don't know what will happen with that property long term. But I'll conclude with that.
Is there anyone, excuse me, can't talk right tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this variance request? Seeing none. Board members, do you have any questions?
I do.
Please, Mr. Brown.
Did you not hear from any of your immediate commercial neighbors about this?
None.
Nobody.
And we sent letters out. We've had the sign out there for over a month. We've heard nothing.
Okay, and help me understand the actual numbers of spaces, because the request is 55 down to 48. So you have 48 right now.
Correct.
The original granting was 53 for a professional office building.
Correct.
Where did those 5 spaces go?
Well, no, the building was built with 48.
Okay.
And the original developer requested the variance for 48 from 53.
From 53 to
Correct.
48. Okay, all right. And because of the use change, it's 53 is now 55.
Correct.
Okay, that part I understand. Question for council, or whoever, staff. And I think I might have had a similar question the last time we saw this property. Medical use, as was testified, is a very broad thing. And so even though their medical use may in fact mitigate the need for 53 or 55 spaces, and everybody's happy, i.e. neighbors are happy, and people coming to the building have a place to park, if they sell the building to another medical, that could be a walk-in clinic, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then just for my own understanding, because I wasn't quite following the DOT getting letters constantly, you're implying there's interest in purchasing the property to do what, interstate widening?
Can you speak to, this is property owner.
My name is Jay Wymel, and I'm one of the 3 building owners.
Right.
I get a...
have you been sworn?
Have you been sworn in?
Yeah, I was sworn in, yeah, I've been in the whole time. I get a letter at least once a week from an attorney firm about imminent domain protection.
Right.
One point to the research fact, if the property gets sold, it would be sold if this gets granted with the stipulation that almost half of the building is continuing to be used as research, which lowers utilization of the building. If it gets sold to an entity who wants to put a walk-in clinic on all 3 floors, and obviously the utilization gets changed for the entire building to medical, which would massively increase the parking requirements.
So this can be a conditional approval, council, based on a concept like that of usage? No. I wouldn't think so.
No.
Right, okay. All right.
Any other questions? Mr. Feldman?
Yeah, I have a question, again, for either legal or for staff. Let's say hypothetically this is approved, and then 6 months down the line, there are complaints from neighbors about people parking in their lots and walking over. How is that handled from an administrative standpoint? Are there citations then given for people who are they towed? I mean, what's the plan there?
Well, when people have customers parking all over and on other people's properties, police are often called to the scene. There's various and sundry problems with parking, but there's no recourse for the city against the person that received the variance.
Okay.
Question for the applicant. You've made the statement that the off-site parking agreement that you currently have is unrecordable?
Correct. So
can you explain that?
Yeah, so there was an agreement with a neighboring property for 25 additional spaces because there was an anticipation to have this as a more intensive use. We brought it to the city. They said they need to clarify that parking was going to be specifically for medical use. When their attorney drafted it and sent it back with saying that's strictly for medical use or medical use parking, and the parking spots would be labeled, he also put a provision there saying this is non-reportable. So it was on the amendment that it became non-reportable. We fought back and forth with them, and then we were told from the building that they're no longer expensing anything else to the attorney, take it or leave it.
Okay. Ms. Long?
Now, is this parking agreement that you have with your neighbors an adjacent neighbor?
Yeah, it's
I mean, like
within-
next door?
Behind the Holiday Inn.
It's within, it's about approximately under 700 feet walking distance.
But I mean, it's next door.
It's across, it's directly across the street. If
It's
you were to-
across,
yeah, if you were-
across West Shore.
If you were to cross at Cypress and West Shore, it's immediately to
cross
the
Cypress?
west. Yeah,
It's
immediately to
across
the west.
West Shore.
And if council, you can clarify, typically, there is a rule that if it were recordable and they could use it, it has to be within a certain distance. And what is that distance?
I believe it's 1,000 feet.
Yeah, okay, it's 1,000. So they're under the 1,000. It doesn't matter what they're crossing to get there, as long as it's within 1,000 feet.
There are rules about crossings and what type of crossing is allowed. I am not familiar with those.
Oh.
Our code does specify what the crossing requirements are. It can't be unsafe for pedestrians to be making the cross.
This is a well-signaled, stop-lit, crosswalked intersection, correct?
Correct. Yeah, signalized and with brick pavers for the crossings as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the record, as long as the salient terms required by our code are recorded in a memorandum of lease, the city accepts memorandum of lease recordings as well. The lease itself doesn't have to be recorded.
I'll leave it to you to interpret that.
Joe, I have one
Yes,
question.
please.
I guess this goes back to the hypotheticals, and both or either can respond, but I'm looking at the site plan, and I'm thinking back, I know that the administrative variance got it to this point in time over the last 20 years. Now, let's just say that somebody just said, you absolutely have to have 55 spots here. Nobody's changing anything. And I'm looking at the site plan. It looks like kind of in the center there that you could fit 2, and it looks like the width as described on the site plan is on the existing spots is 8 to 9 feet. I don't know what a normal parking space is, but I'm just wondering how realistic it would be to add 7 spaces, or is it not realistic?
In the center that you're looking at, that's an overhang, but there's structural pillars holding up the second story. That's what that little U-shaped structure is. I believe that's what you're speaking about, right here.
All right, so you're saying there's room under the building, or
No,
under
so
that?
yeah, so
Yeah,
right
yeah.
here there's 3 structural components.
Okay.
There's no first floor there, but there's a second and third story above that.
All right, so even that's out of the question.
Yeah, and truly, it's, I think we had even discussed with the city doing small car parking spaces, but we had even thought to speak to the city about other new technologies to try and get this done, but as it is now, it's truly built out. Could we snake 1 in there somewhere maybe if we get, but it's not, we're not gonna get 7.
And it's far from a nuisance perspective. This is all fenced. You can't just park next door and walk across, and then we have the highway right there and West Shore. I'm not sure how people walk across from a neighboring parking lot.
All right, so unless these spaces become very, very tiny, it's not going to be really easy to go up to 55, no matter what.
No.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Okay, I have just a couple questions. On your site map there, can you show me where the entrance and exits are?
Sure. The entrance and exit is right here.
No, I'm sorry, to the parking lot.
Oh, to the parking lot.
From West Shore and or Cypress.
It's a single entry and exit, so 275 off-ramp is right here.
Yes, sir.
You would
And
make a
West
right,
Shore?
and then that's the entry there. Cypress would be, here's Cypress Street right there.
So there's 1 entrance.
1 entrance.
Okay, and I just want to go through the numbers again. You've got 48 parking spaces.
Correct, yeah.
55 employees?
No, not 55.
How many employees?
On the busiest day, we would have, well, including the research, 12 plus 2, so 14 people.
14 people as employees?
As employees.
And you're saying 12 patients a day?
A day. Worst case scenario, that'd be 3 patients with a family member, so 6 patients, 6 people.
Thank you. Any more questions? You've got 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
I think I just would also like to add, there is a major spinal facility very close to this property that recently closed within the past week. And I truly think this would fill the void of patients who are in need of that type of medical treatment, and further incentive to never want to sell to that point. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, but.
Well, I'd like to focus more on the new technology that we have. We have other places, other centers, and the fact that we have a corporate Uber account has helped us. It's helped us to make sure that people show up on time as well, which has been helpful for us as well. But not everybody wants to come to our building in a car anymore those days. I mean, we've noticed this over the last 2 years that's gotten quite different. So the Uber helps us. And the fact that we are able to put just solid research. We just got a contract with the VA with 1 out of 5 hyperbaric chambers in the state of Florida. If somebody in the Tampa Bay gets the Benz disease because they come up too high with after diet emergency, they come to our building for emergency treatment. Just treating 2 patients requires 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. This is not a chiropractic clinic. This is not a clinic where we're running through 80, 90 patients in a half hour. That's not the intent. It will never be the intent. In fact, if I put the building up for sale tomorrow, I'm going to have a hard time selling it because of the eminent domain. Everybody knows that every single FDOT map shows that our building is in the way. So we're not here to get a variance and sell the building next week, next year, 10 years from now. It'll be very hard to do so. Plus, we have no interest in doing that. We're here to serve the community.
Does that conclude your rebuttal?
Yeah.
Without objection, I will close this public hearing and open it up for board discussion and or comment, or motion, excuse me.
This is really almost cutting edge of parking discussions. It's really interesting because I actually have been looking at future transportation technologies, and it's really interesting to see a business that's using a corporate Uber account and thinking about where things are going. The challenge that we face, that we always face, is, well, these issues run with the land, and so we have to be considerate to the neighbors, the future neighbors who may be here. But it sounds like we have a business owner here that is cognizant of that is doing everything in their within their ability to try and work with what they have and think about where things are going in the future. And I believe, although it is not necessarily for variance consideration today, but I believe that the parking that we have now is not going to be necessary in the fairly near future. And it's probably something that City Council could take up in the near future. But based on what I'm hearing, I'm in favor of this variance. It's not a huge reduction. It sounds like they've been operating under these conditions for a period of time, that there haven't been problems, that they don't anticipate a change in the future, and that there are ways to deal with the reduced parking going forward. So I could support this, given what I've heard.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Ms. Long.
I have a question. Can we approve this contingent upon their having a corporate Uber account?
No, that is not something that can be conditioned.
I was afraid you'd say that. Okay.
If the board doesn't mind, I'd like them to make a comment that if this is granted, it's going to stay with this property. Sure. And this is just my personal opinion, that in the future, City Council or the city might start looking at parking issues where this is granted for this particular building and this particular owner. That in the future, that if an owner sells a building, the new owner would have to come back in and repetition for the type of amount of parking spaces. I think that would work out simply because as in Mr. Feldman said, our transportation issues are going to be forever changing, whether it be 10 or 20 years from now. If I weren't chair and I was a board member, I would more than likely grant this variance for this petition based on that. However, the way our codes and ordinances are today, which I hope to see change in the future, we have to look at this as if we're doing this forever. And if this building does get sold,
Who knows?
whether FDOT buys it or not, and under eminent domain, the new owner might change it to a different type of business and might need all 40 of the 8 of these spaces.
Might need a lot more.
Having said that, I will open it up for a motion.
If you can get them to change the parking requirements when a new person buys in, get them also to change the wet zoning when a new person comes in.
Ladies and gentlemen, the viewpoints and opinions.
This is not city council. This is not city council.
Well, all right, Kai.
No. This is open for a motion. Who would like to make a motion?
Well, wait a minute. I'm just going to throw in that my recollection was there was significant opposition to this proposed project in the past, but my recollection was it was a bigger reduction of parking. And I don't recall any discussion or testimony regarding interest from DOT. But I think the difference for me tonight is that there is a definite physical limitation that's being forced on this property by the interstate expansion, which is coming. Nobody knows when. So I think that helps me to consider the slight reduction of parking spaces. The biggest problem I have, though, is that the medical use could change tomorrow. I mean, as soon as they get this, it could become a walk-in clinic, and I've seen other walk-in clinics function, and it's not a pretty sight. So I understand the intention of the current owner and applicant's statements about how they're running their business. I just don't know how much weight to give any of that, because it could change tomorrow. But if it didn't change tomorrow, if they did continue to operate the way they have testified, I could be okay with the 48 spaces.
Especially with one entrance on a major road.
Well, that's why I'm saying the physical aspects of this property are such
Yes.
that another medical concern trying to do business there, like I don't mean to pick on walk-in clinics because they have a purpose, but they do generate a lot of traffic at one time, and I just don't think that you could get those folks to park across the street, even if they had the easement agreement, more than once. They probably wouldn't go to that walk-in clinic much unless they had to. So,
Mr. Feldman, please.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak a little bit about what you're talking about, but I did also want to point out the value of having a medical office building of this nature. We need more of these things in the community.
But aren't there a bunch available now?
There is some other space, but that's for a different discussion. The other thing that I wanted to point out, just to touch on what you were just raising, is it is not to another potential owner in the futures. It's not to their benefit to have an approval for less spaces. It works to their detriment. So in that respect, it makes it harder for this owner to sell to a business that would require more parking for their people. It's unlikely to happen, because if they have a walk-in clinic, that owner is going to say, I'm not going to have enough parking for my people. So they're going to be less likely to buy in this situation.
But there is proof every day that you can see where that situation exists, and it's been existing for a long time, and it creates a lot of burden on the neighbors.
I understand. I do understand that if we...
And that was what we heard in the previous case from nearby businesses.
My recollection was that the reduction in parking was a much greater...
Yeah, I don't recall exactly what it was, and we didn't hear testimony.
Right.
So, But anyway, it doesn't matter, it's not gonna change my opinion. I'm okay with this
Yeah.
one, the way it's been presented.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Then Mr. Brown, please, make a motion.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Mr.
Villa's gonna jump
Mr. Villa, jump in there,
Sitting
please.
over here. All right. I'd like to move the variance request for case VRB 19-24 for property located at 701 North West Shore Boulevard, Tampa, presented at the public hearing to seek relief from section 27-283-7, and that's to reduce the required parking spaces from 55 to 48 spaces based on a change of use from professional office to medical office and research based on the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record, and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardships set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically in this case that there's legitimately, in my view, a practical difficulty in adding the additional spaces. There's no more room on the site plan, and there's potential with interference with expansion from the highway department, and that these 48 spaces that are on the site were originally approved with an administrative variance, and that's why the configuration is as it is, and I'd say that we should just leave it alone.
I'll second it.
There has been a motion made by Mr. Villa, seconded by Mrs. Long, to grant the petitioner's request for VRB 19-24. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Your petition has been granted unanimously.
Thank you, Board. Thank you, Board. Thanks for your time.
Next case, VRB 19-32.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development. This is application VRB 1932. The property address is 8725 33rd Street. The applicant is seeking to reduce both the west and east side yard setbacks from 7 feet to 2 feet to allow construction of a new single-family home. The lot is zoned RS50 and was purchased in 1986. The vacant lot was with only 25 feet of frontage is a legal buildable lot. This is the aerial of the site. Here's the parcel. And here's a photo. This is the parcel, the area here that's fenced in. This is the property line here. And it's within this fenced area.
Ms. Anthony, what's the frontage again?
25 feet. And this is another photo showing the parcel. And here's the site plan.
Tiny homes.
And you can see the 25 feet of frontage, and they're requesting 2 feet on both side yards in order to build a residential house. Now here is information that they've provided. Staff made the determination that it was a legal lot, a buildable lot, and this is from 1954, and it shows the legal description that currently is in existence. Are there any questions of staff?
I got lots.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Long, please.
And you're probably gonna tell, is it a typo that on the agenda it says from 7 feet to 2 feet, but on the application it says 7 feet to 2 inches?
Does say 2 inches.
It should be 7 feet to 2 feet. That was the note.
It's to 2 feet?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a typo on there. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, you said it's a legal lot, meaning it was platted accordingly,
Correct.
but current zoning is RS50, right?
Correct.
And RS50 requires 50 feet of frontage and 5,000 square feet of square footage total minimums to be a legal conforming lot.
Correct.
So why is this one at 25 feet a legal conforming lot?
If you have a lot of record established by a date, which they do, 1954, then it is determined that you have a legal buildable lot.
Okay.
Because they just based on the date, it pre-existed code that they have a legal buildable lot.
Okay, I mean, I can't argue that with you because I've never heard this explanation before. So if legal concurs, which I'm sure they do.
100%.
Okay, because I always thought that there had to have been maybe a previous structure on it and you had the right to take that structure down and replace it. But this is a vacant lot. It's been vacant forever, right?
Correct. There's not been a structure here. The owners have owned the lot. It's been in their family since 1986.
Okay, and just if you could put the one picture back up that showed the house next door to the right. It was kind of more in line with the lot. I think it was the second one you put up. Yeah, okay. And you don't need to put it back up, but if you, well, maybe you do. The site plan showed that the proposed structure 2 feet off the property line, the existing structure next to it is 2 point something feet. Nope, quit moving. Okay, it looks like there's something sticking out on the footprint of the house next door, and it looks like it's, oh, is it 7 feet? It is 7 feet. Okay, all right, I thought it was 2 feet. Okay, so that structure does meet primary side yard setbacks.
Correct.
Okay, 4 Rs 50. Okay, I'd love to hear this case.
Any other questions for staff? Petitioner, please. Mr. Brown is waiting.
I'm Richard Valdez, the owner of the lot, and this is
Over
my
this
son
side,
David.
please. In the middle of the podium.
Okay, I don't know where your mic is at.
You just speak.
Okay, nonetheless, I'm Richard Valdez. I'm the owner of the lot. I bought this about 34 years ago. When I did buy it, I did check prior to from the city that it was a buildable lot. Time is now to do something finally. My son's going to help me with this, and he'll give you the presentation. His name is David. He'll introduce himself.
David Valdez. I have been sworn in. My address is 2512 West Virginia Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33607. So as we are here in front of you this evening to basically apply for the variance in regards to the side yard setbacks for our property located at 8725 33rd Street. We are seeking to reduce the side yard setbacks from 7 feet down to 2 feet, both on the east and west sides of the property, in order to build a single family home. The current lot is 25 feet wide by 140 feet deep. In order to build a single family residence of suitable width on this parcel, we need to reduce the side yard setbacks, again, down from 7 feet to 2 feet. The hardship does not result from the actions of the applicant or owner of the size of the lot is today as it was prior to 1956. We do have the tax records to show that, which she showed you already, prior to 1955, showing that it is an actual buildable lot. Side yard setback variance will not interfere with or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected by the allowance of the variance. We are proposing to construct a new home approximately 40 feet from 33rd Street, which would be front yard setback, which would meet the front yard setback, and then 47 feet from the rear of the setback on the rear yard. The variance requested is in harmony with and serves the general intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan by allowing for the construction of a new single-family home. By approving this variance, you'll be relieving us of the hardship of not being able to build a suitable single-family home on this property. That's pretty much all I have.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this variance request? Seeing none. Board, do you have questions for the applicant? Mr. Brown.
Could somebody put that one of those pictures back up of the property?
Site plan.
No, the pictures of the property. I can't believe we're going to get through a night without hearing from Natural Resources.
This is an older one. She might have
Oh, okay. I mean, if you have other photos, that'd be great to see them.
Show 'em
What is that?
show 'em what the house looks like.
That's the front tree, on the front of the yard. If
Is
you're
that
looking
gonna
from the
stay?
street. Sir?
Is that gonna stay?
Yes.
We're gonna try to keep it. We
Okay.
had the city go out there and look at it, and they said, you can take it down or leave it. It's got some issues with the tree. We prefer to leave it. We're able to put our driveway on the north side of that tree, which is on the left, and still access the house. House will be approximately 20 feet across the front, which will give you a couple feet on each side. And the closest neighbor is 7.5 feet off his property line, so it gives us 9.5 feet in the event that you had to get firefighters in there. You got at least 35 feet to the next house to the north. Same reason, same purpose. The Canes, Mr. Cain's property. We've spoken to both the neighbors. They have no issue. So we come to speak to you.
Did you consider purchasing additional property from the neighbor to the left?
We asked, and they really never, I spoke to
Mr. Cain was the owner of the, I guess now it's an estate. So he passed away and left it to his sons, and I don't think they're legally allowed to sell any part of the lot without each other's consent, the two brothers. My father, multiple times, was trying to purchase
from Mr.
additional.
Cain, and he always said, oh,
He enjoys cutting grass.
let me think about that. Every year I come by and see him, and let
Okay,
me
so
think about
the
that.
vacant lot in question to the side is also a 25-foot wide lot?
No, it's attached to, their home is in the middle, and they've got like 200 and some feet of frontage.
A question for staff, though. Is it a similar 25-foot collection of properties? And if that
I
owner
don't think so.
decided
No,
to,
it's not.
I'm just using the 25-foot, if that is in fact a legal lot, if they were to sell it off, could we have two of these 25-foot lots potentially under consideration?
Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
might be able to make this really short.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Well,
they have a legally buildable lot.
No, I'm trying to understand, is there another legal buildable lot next door? That's my question.
I don't believe so, but I mean,
Well,
I'd
let staff
defer to
weigh
the-
in. Can
the
you tell me
attorney.
if there is a lot, and whether it makes a difference or not?
So this is the plat.
This was originally lot, I think it was 42, is that right, on the tax records?
Okay, well, this won't answer my question because it doesn't show me where that neighbor's house sits relative to the immediate platted lot.
41. For lot 41.
Oh, 41.
So you're asking about this area here?
Yeah, I mean, if that's a legal, if there is a legal 25-foot wide platted lot there that owner someday in the future decided to sell to some, whether it was the same neighbor or a different neighbor, that owner, future owner, could build or could have a buildable lot. They'd still have to come in and ask for variances if they needed, like these gentlemen are.
Tawan Anthony Land Development, that could be possible if it's been in single separate ownership, such as the one that's before us today.
Okay.
There are some other conditions that
Okay,
determine
so
if
there
it's a
are maybe
buildable
some other
lot.
conditions that might not allow it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me ask.
Any other questions? Would you like a few minutes for rebuttal?
Is there anything to review? Yeah.
No. Just trying to build a skinny house.
I'm not too skinny, that's why we want the variance.
This is a curveball, but I'm just going to ask legal, and maybe Mr. Brown can help. If they were to build this on stilts, and the structure for the stilts were within the 7-foot setback, would it still have to meet the, and there was the overhang that was 2 feet, would it still have to come before us?
It's the plane of the
It's the
building.
whole plane, okay. Thank you, thank you. Again, that was a curveball.
Nothing but the plan.
All right, if there's an objection, I would close the public hearing and open up for more discussion and/or motion. Ms. Long?
I have no problem with this. I know that if you got a 45-foot wide lot, or 25-foot wide lot, you take 7 feet off each side, you have a hallway. It's pretty much all you have left. So I have no problem with this, and if you want, I will make a motion, unless somebody else has something else to say.
Well, I'm just gonna throw this out there. There's nothing that says you have to have a home that is 21 feet wide. It could be 18 feet wide.
Okay.
It could be 15 feet wide. At some point, it's too narrow. So, even though it doesn't matter, my only reservation going to the 2 feet on both sides is that granted there's an existing structure next door that does meet existing setbacks, and if that house were to be torn down, they'd have to meet the same 7-foot setback, otherwise they'd be in front of someone, you know, a board, asking for less, and this house might be sitting there then, and that would all have to be weighed in. If the other side has that same condition upon it, which I didn't hear that it does, it might, then I might be able to be persuaded to go with the 2 feet on each side. But right now, I'm having a problem with that.
Ms. Long, if you'd like to make the motion.
Sure, I'll make motion. I move that the variance request for case VRB 1932 for the property located at 8725 33rd Street, Tampa, Florida, be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the side yard setbacks from 7 to 2 inches, 2 feet, excuse me, per section 27-156, with encroachment for eaves and gutters, based upon the applicant presenting competent substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code, specifically that this lot is only 25 feet wide with 7-foot setbacks required on both sides. You end up with 25 minus 14, 11-foot house, 11-foot wide house. And so in order to make any kind of residential or building that is usable on this lot, there has to be some give in the side yard setbacks, and they have shown this was not a condition that they self-created. It was caused just by the skinny width of this lot.
I'll second.
We have a motion made by Mrs. Long, seconded by Mr. Feldman, to grant the petition on VRB 1932. Is there any comments?
Yeah, I'd like, if this passes, I'm all in favor of affordable housing and coming up with, you know,
yes,
you know, some real long-term answers to that problem in our city. This is a pretty interesting case that, you know, I hope someday soon, City Council might take up in terms of reduced setbacks and whatnot. And in what parts of the city that it may or may not occur.
Yes.
Okay? Because infill is necessary, it's mandated by the comprehensive plan. There are places in Tampa that are already being impacted by the rising costs of land, et cetera. And this is a very interesting project, you know, so anyway.
I hear you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Your variance is passed 5-1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Our next case is VRB 1933.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is application VRB 1933. The property address is 7216 South Juanita. Per section 27-156, the applicant is seeking to reduce the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 14 feet 6 inches to extend the existing rear balcony. The property is zoned RS50 and was purchased in 2003. The house was built in 1989. Here's the aerial of the site. Here's the parcel. And this is South Juanita Street. Here's a photo facing front. And here is the survey and the site plan just showing what they're proposing. And you can see they're reducing the setback. This is the area here to 14.6 feet to allow for this hatched area. This is the addition. This is the existing deck, and this is the portion that they're proposing to add on. Okay, so here's the existing deck, and here's the portion in the hatched red area that they're proposing to add on, and this is the, and that would be the reduction here from the required 20 feet to 14.6.
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Anthony. Petitioner?
Good evening. My name is Perry Sullivan. I live 4311 River Hills Drive. I don't know when essentially what my client wants to do is extend an open deck. Right now, what she has is very narrow. It's not functional. She wants to be able to put table out there and chairs and maybe entertain a couple of people. It's going to be open deck, no cover over it, no sides. Only the 4 posts will be on the ground, will be encroach into the existing setbacks. There's a picture. This is where we're going, and essentially it's going into a jungle. Nobody back there wants to, we're complaining about it. We didn't have any complaints. We sent out the 250 letters. Also, there's some Brazilian peppers, yeah, which are invasive species. We're gonna get rid of those once we move the deck back. It's pretty straightforward what she's asking for. I'm finished with my part. Come and show the pictures.
Well, I have pictures of the rear, and of course, oh, I'm sorry, Sandra Campbell, 7216 South Juanita Street, 33616.
Sworn.
And I have sworn, yes. Thank you. I have pictures of the rear, and the deck is just not functional. We have 2 chairs out there now, and because it's so narrow, we can't put a table or entertain or do anything out there. And it's already been encroached upon by my new neighbors. That's where I'm located, and I'm sure you all know what that is, right? No, that's the Lennar project. This is, where is it? This is what it looked like before Lennar started. Well, they already started, but I don't know, is that this way? This way? Yeah, I mean, I had a canal run in there. There's no neighbors behind me. There's 2 vacant lots. I've had no complaints. I've had people say, yeah, go for it. It sounds like a good plan. And it'll enhance the neighborhood with all these new construction homes.
Sure.
Yeah, this is the Brazilian pepper.
This is better.
Okay.
This just shows the jungle I was telling you about.
Yeah.
That you'll be going into.
So it basically is going to extend to the bottom of where the staircase ends, and we're going to move the staircase because that's also in the middle of the deck, which really makes it difficult to do anything out there.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this variance request?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is AJ Sanchez. I live at 7206 South Juanita Street. I originally came here.
I'm sorry, sir, did you say if you'd been sworn?
Pardon?
Have you been sworn?
Yes, I have been sworn. Sorry. This is my first time doing this, so please forgive my missteps. Okay, I originally came here to object to this because I have been living with the Lamar construction, like many of us down there, and can't wait for 600 extra cars down my street. However, after seeing what she's asking for, I sit on the same side as she does. And did you know that you have half a lot, half a 10-foot alleyway in the back?
Yes, I believe you're aware of that, but I'm not sure where that plays into this.
Oh, okay, well, no, you have extra 5 feet. Yes. Instead of 100, you have 105. Anyways, they're building a deck. I was worried about a house being built behind us because the property behind her was hard to tell whether they were talking about the property behind or forward. So I have no objections to what this wonderful young lady is doing.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to speak to this petition? All right, come back up. Some of the board members might have questions.
That's what yes.
Any questions, board members?
I'm assuming this case is in front of us because it's more than 3 feet above grade? Is that the criteria that causes this to happen?
Correct.
Okay, do you know how high above grade you are with the existing deck?
It's probably around 9 feet.
9 feet above existing grade? Didn't look like it in the picture.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the
Here.
sea level, just to sea level.
Well, you can see here.
Well, maybe it is, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty high up there. There's probably 6 steps, maybe 7 steps to get down to the ground level.
Okay, all right, so it's way above 3 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes, sir.
And this picture was taken from the Lennar property on the other side of the canal?
No. Which picture's
The
up
one
there?
that's up right now.
This one? No, yes, this was taken from that side of my house, yes.
Looking, so there's a canal between you
Right.
and what's being
You can
developed?
see where the RIPA black signs are, the canal's on the other side of that, and that's taken from that angle.
Okay, all right. So those properties that they're developing would, 2 or 3 of them might have that view. There's no wall or anything that Lennar is going to be putting up?
They're putting in a retention wall, but it's only going to be,
Lower,
yeah,
okay.
and
Okay,
it's
all right,
getting pretty
thanks.
close to the end.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Long?
How deep is the current balcony?
It's 8 feet wide, I believe.
8 feet deep?
Deep,
From the
yes.
house to the,
Yes.
fall off the end?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Story.
I had a question for Miss Anthony. Does the stair not factor into the setback, I assume?
Stairs.
To Wanda Anthony Land Development, if it's over 3 feet, it's considered structure.
Okay. Now I have a question for the petitioner.
We don't have to put the stair right there. We can put the stair on the side.
That's what I was going to ask. If
Yes.
you're not opposed to that,
Oh, yeah, and
That's
in
the
fact,
plan.
we don't want it coming up in the middle of the deck.
it'd probably be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rebuttal?
Yes, sir.
Without objection, I'm going to close this public hearing and open it up for board discussion and/or a motion.
Do we need to be concerned with the width of the stair for the side setback? I'm just asking because I don't want them to have to come back later if that's going to be an issue.
No, sir. We have 8 feet 7.
Did we close it?
Yeah, we closed the public hearing.
Oh, well,
You want to make a motion?
no. I just don't want to approve something that they're not going to be able to build.
Okay, at the side way, it won't
Wait,
be.
excuse me, sir. We have a motion to reopen the public hearing. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Go.
Or Miss Anthony, either one, petitioner or Miss Anthony. Are we going to have an issue with the side setback clearance if you put the stair on the side?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because we have over 8 feet, stairs only gonna be 3 feet wide.
What side setback do we need on this deck, Miss Anthony? if it's over 3 feet.
The one to Anthony Land Development, the side setback would be 7 feet.
Okay. So we don't have 7 with a stair on the side unless it cuts into the width of the existing deck. So we just need to work this out because you can't do it straight off the middle because you're not getting enough rear yard, and you can't do it off the side because you're not getting enough side yard unless it cuts into the width that you have there.
Can I
Please,
speak?
go ahead, sir.
Yes. It's not gonna be an issue, keeping it within the same footprint of the deck. We just whack some of it off.
Okay.
Because it's old and rotten anyway, so.
Okay.
With that,
I just want to make sure you know that before you go to build it. I don't want you to run into trouble.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You wouldn't want to see us twice. Yeah.
Purpose enough.
Without objection, I'll close the public hearing, open up for discussion and a motion.
I'll move to approve. VRB 19-33, located at 7216 South Juanita Street, to reduce the rear yard setback. Oh, wait a minute, yeah, rear yard setback from 20 feet to 14.6 feet per section 27-156 in order to construct the extension of a rear balcony based on the 5 hardship criteria, that if this is granted, it will not substantially interfere or injure the health, safety, and welfare of others, and it's in harmony with the Tampa Comprehensive Plan, specifically that it does not back up to any immediate neighbors.
Second.
Mr. Brown.
Oh, did I make a mistake?
May I
Yeah, go ahead.
suggest an amendment?
Sure.
The petitioner at the very beginning said it would be an open, unenclosed deck. I would.
Well, I think that's depicted on the site plan, but sure, I'm okay with that.
To suggest that we make it an unenclosed.
Yeah, that this would be an unenclosed wood deck.
Great.
In perpetuity.
There's been a motion duly made by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mrs. Long, to grant the variance request for VRB 1933. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Your variance request has been granted unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Long. We are finished. We only have one more thing on the agenda this evening. And it is time, that time of year, to elect a new chair. And if I may take just a couple moments, there are some things in my future that I hope are going to come to fruition. And in that case, well, you know, I'm just stating. And in that case, I would prefer not to run for chair. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you board members for allowing me to lead this board. It has been a pleasure. I also would like to thank Mr. Hickey, Mr. Pederica, Mr. Dingfeld, and Mr. DePapa for allowing me to be chair this year. I had an immense time and I learned a lot, so much from all of you. I would like to thank city staff for allowing me to do this, and especially thank you, Ms. Moore, for your guidance. It has been a pleasure working with you. That's correct. Now, using my last privilege as chair, I would like to nominate Mr. Brown for chair of this board.
Second. Yes, that was cool.
Is there any other nominations?
Well, I would just like to say that I'm honored to be nominated, but Mr. Pester, when you're chair, you don't have to make motions.
I know, but you know, I like to weigh my opinion more, and the chair is supposed to do that less.
Okay. Okay.
All right, let me.
I see what you did there.
Let me pivot this way. Mr. Brown, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
All in favor of Mr. Brown being the new chair of the Variance Review Board, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Now we have to vote for a vice chair. Do I hear any nominations?
I nominate Mr. Pastor.
second it.
Oh, there is a motion made by Mrs. Brown, seconded by Mr.
I'm
Villa.
not Mrs. Brown.
I mean, Mrs. Long. Boy, see, I
not that
just
late.
got out of the job and I'm messing up already.
that
Motion
late.
made by Mrs. Long, seconded by Mr. Villa, that Mr. Pastor become our new vice chair. All in favor, excuse me, Ms. Pastor, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I'll do that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Gentlemen, congratulations. I know this will be just as rewarding for you as it was for me. Again, I thank all of you for helping me out.
Thank you.
Cool. Don't be absent, Gary. Thank you. Thank you for your service, Joe. Also, you may not know the little-known bylaw that you must replace yourself if you leave mid-cycle. So, you know, good luck on the election. Find yourself a replacement on this board. Quickly.
Wait, is that the Bible?
Yeah.
Well, I love it. We need Mr. Randolph to spread this out.
Like, if you cycle out on normal time, then it's just a suggestion, but if you leave mid-cycle, you have to find a replacement.
Well, I'm just gonna say this, well, yes, we are adjourned.